I'll make sure to come in. Okay, we'll do. Yeah.
All right, welcome. It's 5 o'clock on Tuesday, January 21st, 2025. This is a regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Cape Girardeau. Welcome to everyone. Thank you all for being here tonight. It's nice to be here. Our last city council meeting was on Zoom, so it's great to see everyone in person. We will begin tonight, as always, with an invocation by the Reverend Linda
Whatever.
I'm so sorry, of Grace United Methodist Church here in Cape Girardeau, and we will follow that with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you want, all please rise and join us.
Thank you, and let us pray. Holy One, on this day after a presidential inauguration and a celebration of the work of Martin Luther King Jr., we pause to turn toward you once again and ask for your guidance. We pray for this often divided nation, that our leaders will guide with wisdom and integrity and offer us a path toward greater unity and not deeper division. We remember the words of Dr. King that darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. That hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. We pray for our community, that we can be people of care and compassion, serving those that we know and do not know, those we see and those we fail to see. Guide the work of these leaders this evening. Help them to not ask first, how do we fix this, but what do we need to learn? How might we need to change, and to whom do we need to listen? And remind them, because we all forget from time to time, that they are not only leaders but servants, seeking to serve the common good of all. Grant them wisdom and courage to know what is right and good and true, guided by your Spirit, the Spirit of justice, the Spirit of community, and the Spirit of love. This we pray. Amen.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Reverend. We do not have any study sessions tonight. We do have two presentations. I will begin with a recognition of Michael Halter here in the city for his retirement from the Parks and Rec Department. So if Mr. Halter would join me up in front, we will do that. All right, this is always fun, although sad when we have a great person retiring from the city. So, and by the way, I'm going to ask you to say a few words if you want at the end, so be thinking about that.
More than half.
That's great. All right. Well, Mike Halter began working for the City of Cape Girardeau Parks and Recreation Department July 6, 1992. As a facilities maintenance coordinator. His initial job responsibilities included management and maintenance of the AC Brazzi Arena, the police station, and City Hall. Mike quickly proved himself as a dedicated employee with vast knowledge and a multi-level skill set. Once the knowledge of Mike's skills and abilities became known, he became involved in projects and maintenance of facilities citywide. Mike provides support and maintenance as well as completing special projects at all city facilities, including City Hall, Public Works, the transfer station, the water treatment plant, the wastewater treatment plant, the police department, fire stations, and parks and recreation facilities. He has had a hand in every major project that has taken place in the Parks and Recreation Department over the last 32 years, including providing guidance and expertise for PRS-1 and PRS-2 initiatives projects. Mike most recently played a major role in the completion of the Kappahaw Park Master Plan, the renovation of the Cape Aquatic Center, and improvements at the Osage Center. There are apparently very few things Mike cannot do. Mike has responded to literally thousands of calls at all hours of the day and night and on weekends when facilities are in need of repair. And by the way, I've also been told that he practically single-handedly nursed the former City Hall building's boiler along for many, many years beyond perhaps its normal lifetime. So yeah, so we got extra years out of that building. So thank you, Mike. I didn't know who to say thank you to, but his dedication and impact on city facilities will be felt for many years to come. Mike's position will be filled, but his 32 years of knowledge are truly irreplaceable. We have your cell phone number, right?
Yes, you do.
Okay, good. All right. Mike has had a stellar career as a supportive and loyal employee that understands the impact municipal employees have on local communities. His knowledge, experience, and personality and commitment will be terribly missed. So congratulations, Mike, on an outstanding career, and enjoy your well-deserved retirement.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Y'all don't have to keep standing. Y'all can sit down. Probably one of the worst things right now, my department head, Doug Gann, is probably going, oh, God, what is he going to say? No, through the years, what a great run. I seen Public Works move from Kings Highway down on Southern Expressway. I seen the Cape PD move. I seen Carmel move. I seen, through the years, whenever the Osage was built, Cape Splash, we did the softball fields. What a great time. And the best one of it all was whenever City Hall moved. The hours that Trevor and Gail Conrad and me, the late nights, the rain, the water downstairs. Lisa, you missed some good times there, let me tell you. But it's been a great run. Good people. I got Adam Howe back there, Cade, my supervisor. Kevin's probably wondering why I'm not going to mention him, but I'm not. No. But it was. The city of Cape is a great place. We did a lot of good things for these citizens, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, stay up here. We always have a little retirement gift, which doesn't even scratch the surface of our appreciation. So it's a little clock, and we hope you can, whenever you look at it, you think fondly of your employment. I know you have some family members here.
Yes.
Would you all like to come up? And because the family has certainly, I'm sure, shared in all of this time and commitment, and we thank you all, certainly. Let's get, why don't you come over here and get some pictures. Act like you like it. Yeah. I'll stand next to you. Stand next to him. There we go.
Pretty sure we all want to go to Mexico. Y'all can postpone. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Every one of y'all.
Thank you. Mayor, if you don't mind, and Mike probably doesn't remember this, or he probably even recognized me, but, over 20 years ago, I worked in the Parks and Recreation Department on the ball fields and stuff, Cade and Scott, and even worked with Brandon back in the day there. And I always remember all the staff had their radios, and they all had a number. And I remember, a few days when I would be working on the ball fields, I would have the radio that day. And if something would go wrong, electrical, and we would have to call, I think his number was 5. We had to call 5 on the radio. You knew it was bad, but you knew he would show up, and he'd show up with a great attitude. So thanks for your service, Mike.
That's very nice. Well, and to Mike and your family, we're going to move on with our meeting. If you'd like to begin your retirement now, you certainly can, and there won't be any problems. Well, we do have another presentation tonight, and that is by the Gun Violence Task Force. And I know we have two co-chairs who are going to be presenting the final report of this committee. Adam Kidd and Jessica Hill have served as the co-chairs of that committee. And I just wanted to give everybody just a touch of background real quick. You may recall, if you've been reading the papers or whatnot, this committee was formed last summer. And so it met for about 6 months. A lot of early mornings, a lot of later evenings, a lot of time, a lot of hours. And what we asked this committee to do was really just a big first step in researching, investigating, learning, and discussing the issues that we see here in Cape Girardeau that might be playing some kind of part in the gun violence that we see here in the city. And it was a challenging ask to a lot of people, but the committee members met for a good long time. And I just wanted to, before we started, I wanted to thank you both for acting as the co-chairs. You did an amazing job, and I'm confident you will tonight as well. To the committee members, some of whom are here tonight, I'd like to say again, thank you so much for your time and your interest and your input. We had there were some difficult things to talk about, some very hard problems to consider, and just really, really appreciated all the dedication from the citizens who participated. I also wanted to thank the administration. We had a number of administrators who participated as kind of local experts, both in the city of Cape and then in some surrounding jurisdictions and whatnot. And that input and time was invaluable as well. Dr. Haskin, we appreciated so much the support from the city in doing this work. And just one last quick thanks to Nicolette Brennan, who is always hiding in the back, running our meetings. But the work that she did to help this committee even form and then proceed, and she was instrumental in compiling this final report and did some great work in facilitating our meetings as well. So I just wanted to give her a thanks and a job well done. With that, I will let you all proceed and just acknowledge that this is the first time many on the council are hearing all of this, and so word of warning, there may be, we may ask you to stop and have some questions for you along the way. But
clarify, yeah, right, correct. Yeah, not only did Nicolette organize everything, but there were probably some times when there was a little mutiny and we were going to all walk out, and she's a peacekeeper. So I appreciate Nicolette. But Jessica Hill and I have been working together with 19 committed, concerned citizens, basically. And some of them are here tonight, and we want to really appreciate their work. The council and the mayor bring this issue forward and allowing a group of people to come together and think about it. We weren't here to solve gun violence. We were here to talk about how our city is A, approaching it currently, and B, can we stop and think for a minute about something in the future. The Reverend's message was kind of right on target there with a couple of things. I wrote down a couple of notes about it. It's very, very interesting to me. So, but thank you for giving us a chance to talk together. We're going to bring you have a written report that has all of our detail. One of the things that I am really proud of is that this was a completely open and transparent process. Every meeting we had was online. All the documents were online. People could come and visit our meetings. We had several people coming on a regular basis, and I think that made us better and smarter about how to think about gun violence. Hopefully I can do two things at once here. We ended up breaking down this discussion topic into really 8 things, eight groups that we wanted to present to us. Those groups are subject knowledge experts in areas that either directly are involved in gun violence or indirectly are impacted by gun violence itself. One of the things that we really talked about was a situation with a gun is on a razor's edge. It could go bad really, really quickly, and it could be resolved in a manner that was unharmful. But it's really tenuous, and it's hard to tell. But we talked to the police first, Chief Glick, and let me just pause. A lot of transition happened when we started this process. End of July, we had a planning session, and our first of the 8 meetings, or 8 presentations, listening sessions, started in August. Transition was in the works right there. The chief that was the chief was going out, and a new chief was, a new interim chief was coming in. That brings new thinking. There's no two ways about that. So we talked with the courts. Again, transition. Ben Lewis, Honorable Ben Lewis, has retired, but he was a great presenter of what gun violence is like in our community, how he sees in the judicial process in our community. So but again, he's a guy that served many years and is retiring. Prosecution, we talked to prosecution, juvenile, the juvenile system, which is actually linked to the 32nd district of our courts here, and that's Ben Lewis, as I just mentioned. We talked to the school system, and these are, when I say we talk, they're listening sessions. We're listening and trying to discern the challenges that they're having on a daily basis. Nuisance and rental, you'll hear a little bit about more about that. And then nonprofits do a lot of work in our community, and they don't probably get the respect that they deserve, but they do a lot of work. They're on the front lines of trying to help people regain their lives, and that's a difficult task. So we worked with those, and so they had those 8 educational and listening sessions. One of the things that we learned is we can keep Cape safe. We can keep Cape from turning into a situation where there might not be any law or order or people that even care. So we can keep them safe. What we ended up with is that this gun violence was on a continuum. And how do we address it? It's on a continuum. Early prevention and programs to help people all the way through the end of the line, and then it's a circle and it comes back. But end of the line, which is enforcement in the judicial process. And they ended up in 3 categories. How are we going to come up with recommendations for the city? And the 3 categories are the city programs and policies. Think the police department, think laws and ordinances like that, because the city can do those directly. Advocacy priorities. So what are the areas that we should invest our time and energy with the state and our representatives in Jeff City to say, these are the things that are happening in our community. Here's how we think you could help us. Let's partner together on those things. And think like justice reform, all right? I'll talk a little bit more about what that means. The juvenile system, talk a little bit more about that. And then the other thing is citizens awareness. People aren't aware of certain things happening in their community unless the community is speaking to them, unless the city is speaking to them about what's happening. And one of the things that came about that was very astonishing, the very first meeting we had, I think, was that a child of any age can carry a gun down the street with no supervision, without any registration, that's legal in the state of Missouri. Now the question is, does that bother us? I'm not making a judgment on if that's legal or not. Does that bother us? Does that cause us issues with our community? So those are city programs, advocacy priorities, and then just general awareness issues. By the way, if you have any questions, just stop me, and somewhere along the line I'll have enough information to try and answer it. In that way, the police department covers one of those categories of what the city can do. And Chief Glick is going to talk about what he's seeing in gun violence in our community. But we've invested in a tool called ShotSpotter, and you all are aware of it. But I don't know that the public is aware of it as much as they should be, and what it's doing to help track the areas of violence or areas of gun activity that we need to really zone in on. So you want to give a talk there, please?
Thank you. Mayor, Council, Dr. Haskin. Just to pick up where you left off, ShotSpotter, we implemented that back in 2022, and then we increased the expansion area the next year in 2023. So on the map or on the screen in front of you, the area to the right next to the river, that was the first area. This is a heat map. So this is where you're seeing a lot of the gunfire happening in Cape. And these are all from ShotSpotter statistics. That was the first area we implemented, and then we branched out the next year, going farther west into that smaller section, and then farther out into that far left section. So since inception, we've had 869 total alerts, over 3,000 shots captured, over 1,000 casings recovered, 40 guns recovered, and then 43 arrests made. Virtually all those arrests came by that ShotSpotter alert. So what we're seeing, and what we've seen for a while now, when somebody hears shots fired, they may not call it in for a variety of reasons. They may not know where it happened. They may think someone else called it in. They may not be convinced it was gunfire, period. So sometimes we weren't getting those calls. In fact, most of the gunfire, we don't get any calls on at all. And we're seeing that with the statistics. So with these arrests made, most of those, there was no corresponding 911 call. There was no call to the police department. These are based just off of ShotSpotter alerts. So that's 40 guns recovered just from that ShotSpotter alert. We put the total number of guns and casings on there. That's important for a couple of different reasons. So there's a system called NIBIN where we can track casings and firearms across the country. It's a federal system, so when we get a casing here in Cape Girardeau, we enter into that NIBIN system, and that can compare casings in other jurisdictions that have also entered those in. So we can actually track a shooter if he commits a crime here in Cape and then goes somewhere else outside of our jurisdiction to another city or another state. That NIBIN system can compare the two, and we can actually make cases based off of that information. And we've had some success. Without getting into details, we've had success doing that already. So over 1,000 casings recovered, that's over 1,000 pieces of evidence that we can actually analyze and look to make more cases just off of the casing. So regardless if the shooter is still there, we're able to recover more evidence. The main reason why we implemented ShotSpotter, officer safety was probably the biggest reason we did that. When we get a 911 call or just a regular call of shots fired, usually unless they saw it happen, the caller doesn't know where those shots came from. So they're calling 911 and they may say they thought the shots came from 2 blocks over, but they're not sure. Sound travels in a lot of weird ways, especially in our town where there's a lot of hills. And it's really hard to narrow down where those actual shots came from. So it's an officer safety issue when an officer responds to where they think the location is based off of the caller's information, and it turns out that's not where the shots happened. The officer could be driving by the suspect and not even realize it. Also, if there's a victim, a potential victim that's been struck by gunfire, having a system in place like this can narrow down that area where we think it happened and potentially find a victim and provide them life-saving treatment. So it's officer safety and to hopefully provide aid to victims that may have been hit. Those are the two reasons why we implemented ShotSpotter. The arrest and the guns recovered, that was all bonus. We were not expecting as much of a success as we've received, but as you can see just from the numbers alone, it's been very worthwhile. Yes, sir.
The 1,136 casings recovered, are those unique? Or are they
Some of them are from the
multiple
same-
casings from the same?
Yeah, a lot of them are from the same scene, but each individual casing, we can enter each one into that NIBIN system and track. And some of them are better used than others. And, with gunshots that happen outside, there are different conditions. There might be dirt involved, or it might be in a street where cars are traveling through. So some casings are better to analyze than others. But a lot of those casings are from the same scene.
I was just curious because of the discrepancy between the number of casings and the number of shots. So.
Yeah, a lot of those casings are from the same scene. And most of the scenes, we do have some where there's one shot fired, but there are a lot of scenes where there are multiple shots fired and we're finding multiple casings. We also have scenes where they fire a shot and we don't find any casings. And that happens for a lot of different reasons. And we'll get into that. but it might be, a revolver or some type of weapon, or, it might be a drive-by where the casing ends up in the vehicle and we're not able to recover it. There are a lot of reasons why we may not get that casing, but we are getting casings just from that ShotSpotter system. In the past, prior to ShotSpotter, I think we were missing a lot. So
I had a couple questions.
Yes,
Can you
ma'am.
go back to the screen prior?
I will try. Oh, okay. Well, that's a lot easier. Thank you.
So I was wondering, like, the areas that you have marked red, are those the only places in the city that the ShotSpotter has been identified for those areas, or are those just the main areas in the city?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the red line
Yes.
around there, that's the coverage area of ShotSpotter.
Okay,
So ShotSpotter isn't picking up gunfire at areas outside of that boundary.
okay, those are the only areas, okay.
These are only areas covered by ShotSpotter. Now, I say it's not picking it up. It actually does pick up some that are outside the areas. And we actually have used the system to get areas outside of that coverage area. It's not as accurate because it's outside of the coverage area.
Okay, and the guns recovered, are those illegal guns or just,
Some of
crimes
them-
happen? Yeah.
Some of them are illegal, the majority of them, and we can get into the numbers, but I would say the majority of those guns are either stolen or they don't belong to the person that actually fired the weapon.
Okay.
Do you feel there's a need to expand the areas that we have ShotSpotter in right now?
I would like to expand it. Of course, that costs money, so, that's the question for you and Lisa, the finance director. If we were going to expand it, we do have some locations in mind to where we think it would be beneficial. So, well, let me jump back. So this first screen here, that, like I said, the area to the right next to the river, that was the first area, then we expanded out west. When we expanded in 2023, we expected the number of shots, because it's picking up a larger coverage area, we expect the numbers that we were gonna be picking up to increase. It actually did the opposite. So the gunfire has actually been going down just based off the ShotSpotter stats. So 2023, we had 356 incidents that ShotSpotter picked up. 2024, 273. So it's been trending down since we implemented it in 2022. And then you can see the number of rounds that have been fired. So, and again, we expected it to do the opposite. So just because it's a bigger area, we expected it to be getting more, but we haven't really seen that. Now, I don't want to jinx it. It could always go the other way, but so far it's trending down.
I have a question too. Is when you typically, do they typically know that's going on in the neighborhood when you find out there's cases or murder or something bad happened? Do people in the community know that ShotSpotter is there, or typically not? When you go out and you start talking to people and.
We're finding out that people have become accustomed to
Okay.
ShotSpotter being there. And I think, this goes back to what we had before when there wasn't a system in place. People weren't calling 911. I think they just grew accustomed to hearing gunfire on a regular basis. They just assumed that the police weren't doing anything
Yeah.
about it. And sometimes that was because we weren't getting a call about it. We didn't know. But now we're getting the alerts regardless of whether anybody calls. So they're seeing us more often in certain areas of town where we're having gunfire. And the people that live in those areas are becoming accustomed to it. And just from personal experience, I think they do appreciate that.
One of the, since we have brought on ShotSpotter, I know one of the added benefits when we were even considering it is the high degree of accuracy with which it can differentiate the sound of a gunshot versus a firework or a backfire or certain other sounds. Because I know sitting around in those areas, you hear that and you think that's a gunfire. No, that's actually a firecracker or whatever it might be. And so that alone, I think is a very influential benefit of this to help quell that, that rhetoric of the fact there's all these gunshots when it's really just a firework.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, it goes back to people calling it in.
Yep.
Sometimes they may actually hear gunfire and just assume it's a car backfiring or something else, or fireworks. And then it's the opposite is true. Sometimes it is just fireworks and they're calling it in as gunfire.
Exactly.
So when you're looking at the stats, sometimes the stats don't exactly match. We may have over 600 calls for service for shots fired, but a large portion of those weren't actually gunshots. They were false alarms. They were, fireworks or something else that weren't shots. But again, the officer in the areas that aren't covered by ShotSpotter, the officer doesn't know that. So we're treating it as if it were actual gunshots.
Mm-hmm.
And the original presentation this was included with that ShotSpotter gave, that they actually had the icons that you could click on. But this is a screen that shows the officer what they see when these alerts come in. So the officer can actually go down to these clips and play them and listen to them before they respond. So the officer can, if he listens to it, he or she listens to it, they may be able to think that didn't sound like gunshots at all. Or, as with these cases, these are full auto gunfire that we've seen in the past. The officer can play that and listen to that, and that's a full auto weapon. That's something we need to get to quick, and we need more officers there, and we know exactly where it's happening. So that's an added benefit with ShotSpotter. We didn't have that in the past. Someone may call in a series of shots, but being able to listen to that and knowing that's a full auto weapon is different than not knowing what we're going into, before we're going into blind. So these are statistics provided by the juvenile office. Again, I didn't provide these, but you can tell their numbers have remained more or less steady. 2020, they had 12 total juveniles. And by juveniles, these are people under 18 years of age. 2020, they had 12, and it has, the different gun-related offenses that they were cited into juvenile for. Now, this doesn't include all the actual juveniles that were taken to the juvenile office. These are only the cases that the juvenile office followed up with. The actual numbers are higher than that. 2021, 9, and then 2022, 7, same thing with 2023, and then 2024, 8. So I think the thing that stands out with this slide is we do have juveniles here in Cape Girardeau that do have weapons and that are using weapons. And as Adam mentioned earlier, Missouri prohibits recklessly selling or giving firearms to individuals under 18, but it doesn't restrict them from carrying firearms. That's what the actual statute says.
Chief?
Yes.
Can you just give us a little understanding of what recklessly selling means legally, or?
Yeah, so again, I'm not an attorney, and I don't know anybody that we've actually arrested for that offense, but if they're not doing their due diligence when selling that firearm, for instance, you don't want to sell somebody that's intoxicated a firearm. It's illegal for them to have it, or somebody that's a felon. A felon cannot be in possession of a firearm. I can't sell a felon a firearm. So that would be an example of not doing their due diligence and recklessly selling someone a firearm. Again, it applies to juveniles.
Would reckless mean not verifying their age?
It could.
I see.
Now this is a question for the prosecutor, and whether or not they want to file charges on that, I don't want to speak for the prosecutor on that. And that's an actual state charge, and then you'd have to check with Greg as far as the city charge for recklessly selling firearms. But there is recourse for that. It's not something we've actually seen, though. I think it's important to note that just the fact that they're carrying a firearm isn't illegal, and that's why that section's on there. So that they do have a caveat in there for recklessly selling or providing a weapon to somebody, but they don't have anything for a juvenile just carrying it. And being able to prove that is another issue too. For instance, if we're stopping a car and we have somebody that's prohibited from possessing a firearm, like a felon driving the car, and if they hand that gun to a juvenile, if we stop the car, unless we can prove that person was in possession, that felon was in possession of that firearm and gave it to that juvenile, unless we can prove that, we don't have a case. And that is something we've run into before.
That's a really good thing. Just that tidbit right there is a really great thing for all of us to consider whenever we talk to our local elected officials. You can obviously see the intent of the law when it was written, but there's loopholes and weaknesses that can be fixed in Jefferson City. And so we need to make sure that we all encourage our elected officials to carry that message back home, because especially for towns of, the state of Missouri has Kansas City, St. Louis, Columbia, and Springfield. And so we have to carry the message for towns of less than 50,000 people. So anytime anybody engages with as a senator, a state rep, anybody else, make sure that you remember that tidbit and how it impacts the city of Cape Girardeau.
Thank you, Mr. Presson. That example I gave, I'm not just making up that example, that has actually happened to our officers. So a lot of people, including the gun violence task force, they weren't aware, but the police department has our own gun crime task force. This is something we started a while back. We did recently revamp it, but the goal of this gun crime task force was to investigate violent gun crimes here in Cape Girardeau and violent career criminals. That was the goal of our gun crime task force. And then the criteria was there must be a pattern of violent gun crimes. Before I took over as chief, we weren't really seeing a lot of success for a number of reasons. Just guidance and staffing were two of the big issues that we were seeing. We did revamp our own gun crime task force in September. Since then, we've had a lot of success. These are old statistics, probably a couple months old, so the numbers have actually gotten better. But 6 arrests, 5 gun seized, a couple search warrants, and then that pending federal indictment, I believe that's no longer pending. That was an actual indictment, and I think we may have another one. But we've seen success with our own gun crime task force, and to kind of differentiate the two, if we have a shooting incident, if the officer's able to make an arrest there on scene, the gun crime task force would follow up, investigate that, see if anybody else was involved, and then investigate that further. Or if the shooter or witnesses had left the scene, a lot of times the patrol officer isn't able to follow up as it's needed. This is something we can have our gun crime task force follow up with. A councilman had asked about a shooting incident that happened earlier this month. That was a case where we had our gun crime task force follow up on that, locate the shooter, and this was probably several weeks later where they were able to follow up, locate the shooter, and get the gun off the street. And this is from our gun crime task force. So we've seen a lot of success with what we're doing there. But again, this is more on the enforcement side of it, which is what the police department has been focused on. But it doesn't do much on the prevention side. Focused deterrence, and this is kind of the philosophy behind that gun crime task force. We are focused on certain individuals and deterring them from committing future crimes, concentrating our resources on these high-risk individuals. There's just a couple stats that are mentioned on the slide. I use that New Orleans stat because I think that kind of represents the same thing that we're seeing in this town too. So less than 1% of the city's population accounts for over half of the murders. I think we have a lot of good people that live in Cape Girardeau and a lot of good people that come through here. There's a very small number of people that are not good, and those are the people that are committing most of the crime. So that's the whole point of focused deterrence. We want to focus on those individuals and on the locations where you're more likely to see these incidents happen. And that goes back to the hotspot policing. That's where crime and violence cluster, and that's where we're deploying additional police patrols to those high crime locations in order to deter crime. I don't believe that the risk of violence is spread evenly throughout Cape Girardeau, and I don't believe everyone living in our community is in equal danger of crime. I think there's a select few people that are involved in those crimes, and I think just looking at the heat map, you can tell those crimes do cluster in certain areas. Same thing with victims. I don't think everyone is in danger of being a victim of crime, but if you're in those areas and you're engaging in any kind of risky activity, you are in more danger of becoming a victim. And obviously there are outliers. It doesn't apply to everybody, but overwhelmingly that's what the evidence is showing. And then I just put a couple nationwide stats in here, like shooters nationwide are overwhelmingly male, under 25 years of age. And you saw with the juvenile statistics, a lot of them are a lot younger than that. And they do have criminal histories, so a lot of times we're not talking about first-time offenders. Our shooters do have criminal histories, and then substance abuse more than likely plays a part.
I had a question, Chief.
Yes, sir.
What percentage do you think of your really, what I would call your serious offenders, violent offenders, are people who are coming into our community coming from outside our community?
I can tell you there are some. We have our homegrown issues too, but some are coming from other communities. So just the location of Cape Girardeau, being this close to St. Louis, being kind of between St. Louis and Memphis, and then you have Chicago across the river. We have a major interstate that runs through town, so we do have people that come here from out of town that do engage in violent crimes. I can't tell you what the percentage is, but there is a percentage of people that are not from this area that are committing those crimes. And we do have a percentage of people that are homegrown that do commit those crimes as well. So, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, but we have been historically focused on the enforcement part. We're really good at reacting towards these incidents, but I don't think we can arrest our way out of violence. And I don't think just focusing on social programs is the answer either. I think we have to do both. And that's kind of been my opinion on this issue. So these statistics are from the FBI and the International Association of Chiefs of Police. But about 200,000 firearms are stolen each year. This goes back to Ms. Randle's question. The leading source for stolen guns are from vehicles. Most of our stolen guns are coming from vehicles. There are some that are from burglaries from houses and in stores, but most of them are coming from vehicles. The rate is triple what it was a decade ago, and then often the vehicle was left unlocked. That's what we're seeing in Cape Girardeau. a lot of guns stolen from vehicles that are oftentimes left unlocked.
Think on your executive summary that this past fall, one gun was stolen from a vehicle each week.
Right, yeah, when we had the task force meetings going, we dived into the numbers a little bit, and there for several weeks in a row, we were averaging about one gun stolen per week, and that was from a vehicle. And most of the time, it's from outside their homes, parked on the street or in their driveway, but it's from outside of their home. So it's not, somebody shopping for groceries or going somewhere else. It's coming from their home, and it's left unlocked or left in the vehicle overnight. And then we have individuals that are breaking into those cars and stealing the weapons. So I believe in the Second Amendment and everyone's constitutional right to carry. I would just ask people be responsible when you do own a firearm and take care of it and make sure it's not accessible to people that shouldn't have it. Another thing that we did, this is our newest canine, Ella. She's the first gun detection dog that we've had in Cape Girardeau, a 2-year-old German wire-hair pointer. So we're using her, she's been fully trained now, we're using her to detect firearms and ammunition. So when we have a shot spotter alert, or if it's outside the coverage area, if we have a witness or reports of shots fired, we can deploy this canine to that area, and the canine can help us locate evidence like firearms or casings. We've already deployed this dog, and we've had some success with the dog already. I know at least one gun we've recovered with the use of this dog, so it's been very helpful. It trained on article searches, building searches, locker searches, person born, and open area searches. So far, we've mainly just used the canine for open area searches. We've also used it for different car stops. It's not necessarily illegal to have a firearm in your vehicle, but there are times when somebody's a prohibited possessor, they cannot possess a firearm, and so we've been able to use the canine for that. If there's an event where guns are prohibited, we could technically have this canine available at the event to alert on someone that's carrying when they shouldn't be carrying. And again, it is okay if you're not a prohibited possessor to carry a firearm in Cape Girardeau in Missouri, but there are prohibited places where you're not allowed to carry a firearm into. And that's where we would use that canine if we have, the need for it. I think that is all I have, unless you have questions. Okay.
Thank you.
We learned a lot from the police department when we were going through this process. It's amazing how things, even just, getting a canine in September, how much change has happened. And Dan, I appreciate your question so much, or statement really, which is, the chief mentioned a couple of things. One is awareness. Just now, he said, citizens, be aware your cars should be locked if you have a gun in them. Be aware. And obviously, once a week, at least, they're not. The second thing he talked about, so that's awareness. The second thing he talked about is one of our planks is advocacy around what do we feel like would help at the state level to manage useless gun violence. So very, very good. Thanks, Chief. And when you went through the process of hiring him, and now he is the actual chief, I think you did an amazing job. He's a wonderful person, and I've enjoyed being around him on all of our meetings. Schools. One of our listening sessions was schools. They brought a team of people because they have a team effort around trying to, as we talked about earlier, as I mentioned earlier, early engagement. And we ask a lot of the school systems to do that. And they've taken basically their same budget and moved to these programs that are so important to us. And to get at-risk youth off the streets and into better situations. I just really want to highlight a couple of those that they're doing. I would also ask you to just take a look at the list, and if you find one that you're interested in, ask me, ask the superintendent, ask anybody in the system, they'll explain it to you. But this one called 21st Century Grant, it's targeted at 5th through 12th graders, and it's after-school programming for that specific area of youth. It's a $2.5 million grant, and it's underway. They applied for it. Was there matching funding, Dr. Rooney? No? Straight grant. So that's good. They also have a whole host of counseling services that once were never needed in schools and now are needed every day. So they do all kinds of things. Provide food for after school, provide clothing, as I mentioned, mental health services. So we ask a lot of our schools, and for a awareness perspective for our community, become aware of what they are, because they're really doing good things.
Adam, may I just jump in real quick on that point? I realized when the school district was presenting on all that, I remembered that I had served on the school board from 2008 to 2014, and much of what they talked about is new since 2014. Yeah. And it's, I mean, obviously we could listen to them for several hours, talk about all they do, especially in terms of intervention and prevention and, character building, or, however you want to say it, with our youth, and directly with the kids that Chief Glick was just talking about, who are engaged in our community in gun violence,
Right.
that we know. So
Yeah.
just wanted to highlight that.
Anything else? One of the areas we talked about was nuisance, and how does housing in our community impact or really promote illegal activities in a lot of ways. 52% of our housing is owner occupied. That's the state average is about 67%, so we're below that. So we have a large number of people that are renting their place of residence, and we need more. We need more quality rentals. But one of the things we really saw was that we would like to see the city fully commit to its nuisance policy, and that means staffing and other resources. That means working with landlords in a way that will promote the actual ordinances on the books around quality of housing and meet certain standards. We know that when there are too many people in a residence and the residence isn't necessarily large enough to house them, there will be things that go on in that residence that's not necessarily good. Now, that doesn't mean, as Chief spoke earlier about, we're talking about a very small percentage of people, but we're talking about extreme violence that could impact a very large percentage of people. And we're trying to zero in on what those things are. So we'd ask the city council to consider, again, housing and nuisance and the resources that are necessary to attack that. We spoke about this already once before, so I won't speak too much about it. But the other aspect of advocating is juvenile reform. The police department, the city, and the juvenile office need to work very, very closely together when they're addressing a specific issue of a person under 18. Okay, and that is handled very, very differently because of the laws around how to handle that person. And I think that as we went through our listening sessions, another change happened, and the director of the juvenile division is retiring. I don't know if he's retired yet. February. Long-term director, works directly with the 32nd District judicial system. But there needs to be some reform. We need to advocate some reform for our district, which covers Cape and Perry, something like that.
And Ballinger.
Yeah, we need to advocate around how we would like to see the judicial process work. We no longer have a detention center here. I know the city can't build a detention center, but the city can talk about how to advocate around that. Why is that important? There are, as Chief said, many young people committing crimes, There are young people committing crimes with guns, and we have to figure out how to create the accountability structure. And the juvenile system, when you're under 18, is the only place to do that. So we would ask for more advocacy from that area. And then the last thing we heard from, at least from my perspective, Jessica will talk to you a little bit about some other stuff too, is that the reason why we don't have our felons in jail longer is because there's only 31,000 beds and there's 44,000 potential inmates. So truth in sentencing needs to be an advocacy. There's some consideration in Jeff City right now around what Judge Ben Lewis told us was a felon who committed a crime with a gun would come to the jail in Jackson at the county. They may sit there for a year before their sentencing or actually trial. They would get sentenced. They would then try and find a spot for that person in this bedding situation here, which means it's probably a 7-year sentence, and they'll probably spend 18 months of it in jail, of which they spent the first 12 months of it at the sheriff's office waiting for their trial. And then they're back out on the streets. So the question is truth in sentencing and again, advocating for stronger rules around that. There are people who in Jeff City right now are trying to do the same thing. So I think those things would be really good to talk to. But really, we can't, as the chief said, we can't legislate or enforce our way out of this problem. There are other ways that we need to be embracing in our city. And Jessica's going to talk to you about those ways to help move the program on.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I am going to very briefly highlight the recommendations that have come forth through our task force's work. Several of them have been brought forth through Adam and Chief Glick's comments, but these are the ones we'd particularly like to draw your attention to. So in the work and the approach of our task force, we were focused on the public health model, which many of you may be familiar with, but basically its goal is to reduce and prevent injury, disease, and death, and promote the health and well-being of populations through data, research, and effective policies and practices. So we tried to take that holistic view, as has already been mentioned. Enforcement is key, social programs and community building are key, and so we have several things to recommend to the city council, and to the community that have to do with how we can holistically address the issue of gun violence. So if you have our written report, the recommendations start on page 15. As Adam has mentioned, we have grouped them into 3 categories. The first is city programs and policy. The second is agencies and advocacy, and the third is public awareness. So with regard to city programs, these are some of the things that we wish to highlight. First is maximizing resources available for our local law enforcement and their criminal justice activities. We would like to see more residences and businesses taking advantage of the opportunity to register their cameras with the city so that they can be used by the police if an incident occurs near them. We would like to see more opportunities for the data that is collected to be used, to be shared. And one of the things that would really help the police department is a real-time crime center that would be monitoring not only ShotSpotter, but also the flock system that reads license plates, as well as the 911 calls that come in. And that would really enhance their ability to respond effectively to calls. We also would like to see an expanded ShotSpotter, as has been mentioned. We'd like to see an increase in the participation in the city's crime-free multi-housing, I know I get it wrong, crime-free multifamily housing program, which can work with landlords and help ensure that their rental properties stay safe. As we mentioned earlier, we see that some of the hotspots in our community are centered around those neighborhoods. We would also very much like to support the Cape PD's efforts towards recruitment, retention, law enforcement academy enrollment, and the talent pipeline for our police department. We're really excited about the progress that's been made towards filling the open positions that had been existing for quite some time with Cape PD, but we know that more support is needed in this area. We know that our police force responds to more calls of a more serious nature than our surrounding communities do, and therefore they need to be supported and compensated accordingly. We also think that there's an opportunity for an ongoing work in terms of our gun violence task force. There's a variety of models in place that for different types of advisory boards that city governments have established, and we think that something in that area would be helpful to Cape going forward. In terms of, let me go back. Some other city government programs that, I'm sorry. I do want to move on to advocacy and external agencies. So we have already mentioned juvenile justice reform. This was something that came up session after session after session. The need for a better working relationship and more communication and collaboration between our schools and the juvenile office was very key in helping to address the issue of teen and youth gun violence, and the need for a Cape Girardeau County detention center, the one that we have closed several years ago in 2011. Now we have to contract with another county to accept our juveniles who need to have detention services, and sometimes when they're full, then it's a matter of calling around the state just trying to find a bed. We also think that there's an opportunity to explore a mental health court that would be similar to the drug court that we already have in place in our community that's very successful, run by Judge Lipke. Mark Welker was in favor of a mental health court that would be similar in its function and would address some folks who have those mental health needs that might lead towards gun violence. We really want to drive home the idea of unsupervised kids with guns in public. We, as a committee, as a task force, fully support all Second Amendment rights, but we feel like unsupervised kids with guns in public is a different matter entirely and needs to be addressed by our state legislature. We also feel like that there are some promising practices in other communities that we could be looking at. One of those is Omaha 360. One is a group called the Community Violence Global, and one is a group called Project Safe Neighborhoods. And we recommend that the ongoing work that's done include them, and also the work that our own community partnership here in Cape Girardeau is doing through a grant program they have called Solve. That would, they're working on bringing together community organizations to address the issue of gun violence in our community as well. Lastly, when we come to public awareness, aside from the kids carrying guns, the second, I think, biggest thing that we really focused on was the need to secure your guns. So you have a lawfully acquired and owned gun, you need to be securing it, both within your home and in your vehicle. You need to lock your car. We also want to encourage our community to report crimes and nuisances. You can report crimes anonymously in Cape. The city is focused on making nuisance reporting as simple as possible, and their enforcement of those nuisance calls as effective as possible. And then again, we would like to see more people registering their cameras. I think there's a great opportunity for a public awareness campaign about the issues that we uncovered and discovered during this gun violence task force effort. And our hope is that these things will continue and that this is just the beginning, not the end of this work. Because I think that we had some very actionable items, both for the city and for our community and for our state, that can really make an impact, not only in Cape Girardeau, but in other communities in Missouri as well.
Jessica, I'm sorry, can I just highlight one thing that you were highlighting, and that is the camera registration. I just wanted to make it clear because it was perked my ears quite a bit in learning or relearning that our police department already has this program in place, the camera registration. And Chief, maybe you can chime in. I don't want to, just to describe it, it's really just a way for citizens to let the police department know that, hey, I have a Ring camera at my house or things like that. And then it lets you all know that if a crime happens somewhere in the area where you know cameras are happening, it saves you guys a lot of time in
Right.
finding evidence, right?
It doesn't give us unfettered access to your cameras.
Right.
What this does is it notifies us that you have a camera at that location. So if we have a crime happen in that general area, we can then contact you and say, we've just had a shooting, we've just had an incident happen. We would request that you share your video footage with us.
Yeah.
So that's what the camera registration does. Again, it doesn't automatically allow us to access your cameras. That's not the intention of this program. If you're not registered, if we have an incident happen, a lot of times it's the police officers or detectives knocking on doors in the area trying to figure out who has camera footage and then trying to track it down. So this just makes it a lot faster, lets us know exactly who to go to. Right now, a lot of people have different camera systems set up on their house. It just streamlines the entire process, saves a lot of working hours. And the idea is to track down that suspect faster and get that person off the street by looking at that video footage.
Chief, do you know how many cameras we have registered now?
No, sir. I would have to get back to you.
Okay.
I know from the perspective of the Safe House that our cameras are registered, and in our previous location, we were next door to the university daycare and their van was stolen, and KPD came and used our cameras and could see that crime take place. So we were happy to help. So we just want to encourage everyone to go to our web page on the city's website, where we have all of our materials. There are lots and lots of materials that were shared with our task force that are available for you to review. All of our speakers had written materials, reports, presentations that they shared with us, and we encourage you to watch those. And then to thoroughly read this report. It's not long, but we did very carefully select our recommendations and highlights from the presentations that we saw to be the most effective and to be the most actionable going forward. So we encourage you to, to thoroughly read our report. This has been a really rewarding experience. I approached the task force from the perspective of domestic violence and learned a lot about other aspects of gun violence in our community. I think I speak for our whole task force when I say our eyes were opened to a lot of things, some of which are very actionable and easily addressed, and others which are much more complex. But we hope that this is the beginning, as I said, of our work in this area. As a community, we're encouraged by the progress that we've seen so far. And we just want to reiterate our thanks to all of our task force members, to our city staff support, and to the council. If you have other questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
I just want to say, wow, thank you very much for everybody that volunteered with this organization, with this task force. I know there were a lot of hours in on this. You guys met on your free time and did this pursuing just the good of the city of Cape Girardeau. And so I'm very thankful that all of you took time out of your schedules to do this. The results that you've gotten out of this are great. This is wonderful, actionable items that we can all personally in this room take action on, but then also as a council, we can take action on. And I am very thankful for all of your volunteerism, all of this good data crunching, all of that information that you guys put together for us. This is just great. Thank you guys very much. I've been on this council for a long time. It's just wonderful to see such wonderful action items put together as the result of a community conversation that has needed to take place for a very long time. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just add, we looked at a lot, you mentioned, looking at a lot of different models that are going on around the country, some of which we have now the benefit of seeing, for example, something in Boston or Baltimore that has been going on for a couple of years now and having impressive results already in terms of dropping the number of gun violence incidents. And they typically all started with something like this. And so, as I said before, this was always known to be a first step. Dan, as you just said, we now have this in our laps and on our plates, and we will, along with the administration, need to have further conversations and determine how we need to proceed.
Yeah.
Thank
One of
you.
the things that we learned was that most of the models are in larger cities. And so for Cape, we're unique because we're trying to take action on this issue for a city our size. We have the opportunity to actually be a leader in that and be a model for other communities of our size who need something that is scalable like that. So it's a great opportunity for us.
I was going to ask, I mean, you in your report here, you note 3 promising practices. Did the committee investigate at all, what something might look like? Would we take some from each of those, because it looks like Omaha, and I don't know where the other 2 are happening, but maybe that's work for, the advisory group or something if that comes to pass, but it might be worth investigating. As she said, a lot of these efforts are in larger metropolitan areas, but maybe taking some from each of those things to bring back here and
I think
devise a plan.
one of the takeaways from the models that we looked at was the public health approach and the idea of both prevention and enforcement. And so, those approaches are what we're recommending as well, because we have seen them work in these other communities, so.
Yeah.
I did have a question too. What exactly is a real-time crime center? Can someone explain that?
I'm sure Chief Glick would be happy to explain that.
I mean, I read the thing here, centralized, but I'm still not getting my head around that.
No, that's fine. So it's a general location where we could pool all these different resources that we have together and actually have somebody there at the helm that can help direct police resources to these different areas. So if we have a ShotSpotter alert, they can take that information, they can access the information with Flock, they can put that together. If we implement a drone program, we can incorporate that into the system too. And that basically we have somebody there at the helm that can help direct police resources to these events as they unfold.
So would that be the dispatchers involved with
Well,
this?
so the dispatch, right now, that's what we're currently doing.
Right.
But the issues that we have with dispatchers doing that, they're also taking 911 calls and they're dispatching units, not just police, but fire personnel too. So it's a little too much to put on our current dispatchers. If we have somebody solely focused on our cameras, our Flock system, our ShotSpotter system, drone program, any other technologies that we add to it, it allows us to make better use of our current resources.
I would assume anyone doing that would probably have to have a little bit more specialized training, right? Maybe some investigative training as well,
That would be preferred.
Yeah.
Mark, the data points that are coming in now to I mean, if you just think, just simply 20 years ago, we didn't have cameras. We certainly didn't have any of this shot spotter. So the data points that are coming in around fighting crime are many. And they're not just a dispatcher saying we have a call, a 911 call. And that's where a center, which, you know, we weren't certainly envisioning a building, and we're envisioning the first steps of organizing all that data that's coming in, sometimes rather fast if it's a larger event, sometimes rather slow if it's a smaller event, but organizing that data in a way that the law enforcement personnel can use it quickly.
Want to make one note of this? Well, I find very interesting, is probably two sides to this. Public safety is very vital, but the number of thefts for unlocked cars in people's driveway, the other side is the story. People are safer than sometimes we presume that people not, because I don't think you'd keep your car unlocked if you didn't feel comfortable. But the point of the matter is keeping your car locked will avoid certain things. But that's kind of a very interesting fact, that people feel unsafe but safe enough to keep their car unlocked. So it sounded a little contradictory.
Yeah.
But
You're right.
I just wanted to add one last thing, and that is just a little recent history, and that is, you know, really 2023, if we think back and look back at a lot of discussion and concern here in the city council and in the public, it was really revolving around a lot of public safety issues. And in particular, people, I think, kind of realizing, hey, there's a lot of gunfire going on. Thankfully, not a lot of homicides. You know, you mentioned, I think we all came away with the realization that Cape does have big city problems, especially in crime-related problems. The numbers are much smaller. But I think our community really sent a message. I felt like I received it loud and clear, that even though we may have 2 to 6 homicides per year, we as a community don't like those numbers. And we don't like, you know, what's been kind of growing, at least in terms of perception. Numbers, you know, are helpful too. But so it's just kind of interesting. You know, we came across a lot of data, and it was always big city numbers, same issues, but smaller numbers. And we, as a community, are just gonna, with all of these things, what we choose to further invest in, that's gonna be a community issue. And it's always kind of boils down to what we think is worth it. Even though we may not have the hundreds and hundreds of you know, data points that Chicago might see, what do we all as a community want to see here in Cape?
And Mayor, I also think it's important to stress all the things that the city has been doing and that the police department has been doing. And I think a lot of times our citizens do not realize all the things that the city has been doing in the community and partnerships and everything to address problems. And I think informing them could be a big help. So I think, and I encourage the public in that regard to go online, cityofcape.org, GVTF, and read all the reports and everything and get informed.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you all very, very much. Appreciate it. And folks, I know there's a number of committee members. We're going to move on, and certainly if you'd like to take a minute and leave, we won't talk about you after you leave. It's fine. All right, wow. Well, I feel like I just need to go home and digest all of that. But we next in our meeting will come to communications and reports from the council. Council members, anything else to add? I will just say I attended one of a good handful of Martin Luther King Day celebrations yesterday in the city. It was wonderful. I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna give Ramona Bailey a little some props for letting us start our day with some amazing music. It was very uplifting, and so thank you. I'm glad I get the chance tonight to say that. But these events are put on by a small but mighty crew of volunteers, just citizens who have had a passion for this event long before it was even a federal holiday. And for 40 years, the Martin Luther King Breakfast has been going on. And so I just wanted to say publicly thank you to those who were involved in that and for your continued involvement in that. Anything else, council? All right, next we have several items for discussion. First, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to appear as an advisory board applicant? Nope. All right, seeing none, then we'll move on to the consent agenda review. Dr. Haskin.
Thank you, Mary. Council, we added 2 additional items for your review, number 8 and number 9. Number 8 is basically a supplemental agreement with Burns and McDonald for the continued work out at the new airport terminal. And finally, number 9, we're ready to accept the fireman extension improvements that will serve 4339 through 4141 Nash Road. Mayor, that concludes the review.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Haskin. We'll move into regular session and begin with the call to order and a roll call vote. Ms. Weismeier-Bueller.
Mr. Bliss?
Here.
Mr. Cantrell is absent. Mr. Essex?
Here.
Mayor Kinder?
Here.
Mr. Presson?
Here.
Ms. Randle?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
All right, council, we have an agenda before us. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. First and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? The agenda carries. We do not have any public hearings tonight. We have a consent agenda. Mr. Young, would you please read that?
Bill 2502, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to execute the Second Amendment to the settlement agreement and release of all claims between the city of Cape Girardeau and James L. Drury, deceased by and through Diane Drury, Janet, Mid-America Hotels Corporation. Bill 2502, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to execute the Second Amendment to the settlement agreement and release of all claims between the city of Cape Girardeau and the James L. Drury, deceased by and through Diane Drury, Janet, and Mid-America Hotels Corporation. Bill 2503, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with professional construction services with Pennsylvania Construction Company, Inc. for the Youth Outdoor Sports Complex. Bill 2503, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with professional construction services with Pennsylvania Construction Company, Inc. for the Youth Outdoor Sports Complex. Bill 2504, an ordinance accepting permanent drainage easements and temporary construction easements from various property owners for the PRS2 stormwater projects in the city of Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Bill 2504, an ordinance accepting the permanent drainage easements and temporary construction easements from various property owners for the PRS2 stormwater projects in the city of Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Bill 2505, an ordinance approving the record plat of Weston subdivision. Bill 2505, an ordinance approving the record plat of Weston subdivision. Bill 2506, an ordinance approving the record plat of Mid-America Crossings Forest subdivision. Bill 2506, an ordinance approving the record plat of Mid-America Crossings Forest subdivision. Bill 2507, an ordinance amending Schedule F of Section 26289 of the City Code related to no parking zones at various locations in the city of Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Bill 2507, an ordinance amending Schedule F of Section 26289 of the City Code relating to no parking zones at various locations in the city of Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Bill 2512, a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a supplemental agreement with Burns and McDonald Engineering Company, Inc. for the new terminal building project at the Cape Girardeau Regional Airport.
All right, thank you, Mr. Young. Council, we have a consent agenda before us. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor then of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That agenda carries. We have one item removed from the consent agenda tonight. That is Bill 2508, a resolution adopting a community development block grant program citizen participation plan in the city of Cape Girardeau, Missouri. We have Alex McElroy to present.
Thank you, Mayor. This is our very first step and developing a community development block grant program which is compliant with HUD guidelines. The citizen participation plan before you outlines how the city engaged residents, community organizations, and other stakeholders in development and implementation of a CDBG program. This is an involved process. It will take some time to set up this program. Fortunately, City Manager Dr. Haskin has 23 years' experience navigating the program. That'll help us develop the program. Approving this plan is required by HUD. We have provided a copy of the citizen participation plan and incorporated all their comments and suggestions. We did release the draft citizen participation plan for public comment on December 14th, and staff recommends that council pass and approve a resolution adopting the citizen participation plan. With that, I'll entertain any questions.
Council, any questions? Yep.
What was the citizen participation? I didn't get to read the entirety
We
of
haven't
it.
done it yet.
Oh, okay.
The very
So,
first step is,
so you're just putting it out now?
yeah. HUD
What you're
require-
asking for is to be able to put it out? Okay.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
The item before you tonight is to formally adopt the plan.
Okay.
It is a requirement by HUD that you have a plan adopted and approved. It does need to be compliant with HUD guidelines prior to engaging the public.
And you said you put the draft out?
Yes, it was released for public comment. It's on the city's website. We also have copies at the public library.
Okay, that's where I was confused. Has there been any response back on that yet, or?
We didn't receive any public comments. We did receive quite a few comments from HUD, but all those have been incorporated.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a point worth maybe even repeating. That is that tonight we are only approving, if so decided, the ability to proceed with creating the plan,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay.
Mayor, there are many steps
Right.
that we're going to have to go through in order to make this potentially come true. I would add, I think 23 years ago, that citizen participation survey plan was only about 8 pages. And I think now it's up to, what, 18 now?
Yes, through all the guidance we received from HUD, we went from a 15-page to an 18-page
Yeah.
participation plan.
And again, years ago, 8 pages.
Yeah.
And I know Alex is going to touch on this a bit about the fact that we started this conversation, a few months ago, and I think you can touch on, who's been playing a strong role here in terms of assisting you and making sure that we actually get to this point, which has frankly been monumental, noting all of the paperwork that's involved in setting up a plan like this.
There are a lot of requirements, and again, this is the very first step. We were notified in September that we were eligible for formula funds, which are annual allotments to cities of certain sizes. We were given 2 weeks to consider whether we wanted to participate in the program or not. Last year, we did evaluate the program. And this year, Dr. Haskin decided it was the right time to make that investment. So since we notified HUD that we were interested in receiving the funds, we reached out to our Regional Planning Commission. We're partnering with them to help develop these large documents. Our 5-year plan is entitled the Consolidated Plan, and for most communities, it's 200 to 300 pages. There's a lot that's involved with it, housing assessment needs. Once we have that 5-year plan in place, we'll need to develop an annual action plan. That's your work plan for the year. It's also your budget for the year. And then at the end of each program year, you need to do an evaluation of the program and submit that to HUD as well.
But for those people who may not are watching or don't really understand all this, ultimately, this is going to help improve housing in at-risk neighborhoods in Cape Girardeau, correct?
Investments in housing, yes,
Yep.
is an eligible expense with the funds.
There's a myriad of things that CDBG
Sure.
funds can be utilized for. It would be determined what the best course of action for the city of Cape is, and that's part of what this plan is, right? Is to solicit input?
Correct.
Okay. I think it's great. I mean, I've had some passing experience with CDBG funds, and I'm so glad the city has decided to do this. It's a resource that's available that I wish we would have been able to take advantage of sooner. I realize the resources are there now, and Dr. Haskin's experience is going to be great. And thanks, Alex.
And I would note, when we started this conversation, we started speaking with the community stakeholders, and we reached out to the Porch Initiative to assist us in putting together the right people at the table to ensure that we contact the proper stakeholders, to ensure that the survey is completed, that we're contacting the right people that are going to be proactive, that are going to be engaged in ensuring that we get a proper response. And I might add, I remember when I started this program, I think 23 years ago, the response that we received was roughly about 15%. And based upon the assistance from Porch, we're up to about 51% here, which is considered monumental. And I know HUD is going to be really excited about those numbers when we present those.
So ultimately, if this all happens, it would be allowing federal money that is focused on low and moderate income areas.
Correct.
To channel through the state, then
Yes.
to the city. So it ultimately wouldn't be city funds. We're talking about federal funds.
Correct.
In the specific federal program that would target, I mean, ultimately, whatever is decided, but we're looking at low-income housing.
You ultimately have community-based organizations that then go out and help you with the mission of the program, correct?
Absolutely, and the keys to success, obviously, is just good overall management of the program and identifying a strategic partner whose sole focus is housing and urban development. Those are two key elements. And if you try to deviate from those, especially the one when it talks about the strategic partner and that sole focus of housing and urban development, I think you run the risk of the program running awry. And that has happened in other communities. I've seen it, and we don't want to go there.
Well, and I also think that while that is the focus, we've been talking about crime tonight, these
Yes.
kinds of programs and improving neighborhoods, I think, will ultimately translate into helping us address crime problems too.
I don't think there's any question
It
about
all
it.
kind of connects back together, I think.
Absolutely.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor then of Bill, I'm sorry, all in favor of Bill 2508? No, I'm sorry, did we get it on the? No, we didn't. Is there a motion to approve Bill 2508?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor then of Bill 2508, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion carried.
I abstain, Mayor.
Okay, okay, thank you. All right, that bill passes. We have several new ordinances tonight. First is Bill 2509, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to execute a grant agreement with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission to fund vehicle parking expansion at the new terminal at the Cape Girardeau Regional Airport. This is the first reading. Mr. Stewart. We've been waiting for the chance to have you up front and center. Our new airport director, Mr. JoJo Stewart. Take it away.
Oh, good evening, Council, Mayor, Dr. Haskins. So this resolution will fund the airport aid grant from MoDOT. Will fund 100% of the long-term parking lot. The funds will be used to construct the additional parking spaces, which will provide the ample accommodations, which was shown in our TAMP, which is our terminal area master plan for the future growth of the airport. So, and this parking lot has actually already been built, so now we're just going to get the funds from MoDOT.
I think if council recall, maybe about a year ago now, Senator Rader ensured that she carried the mail for us, if you will, in an effort to, I think it was like 350,000.
Yeah, it's up to 350,000. We applied
she-
for it back in 2003, and they promised.
Yeah, and it went through both houses, and the governor signed it, thanks to her leadership on that.
Any idea how many parking spaces there would be, do you know? And what would be the time frame for when this project could?
The project's actually already completed. They've already went ahead and built it since they did
so it's
promise
done.
the funding, so it's done. So now it's just a matter of getting.
Is this the parking on the other side of the
Yeah, on
road?
the other side of the road.
Okay.
Yeah, it's over 100
Okay.
additional parking spots back there. And we consider it the long-term parking. So,
Is there anyone in the public who wishes to comment on this? Okay. Council, then, is there a motion to approve Bill 2509?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut it
Well,
off.
I got to fly out of the new terminal for the first time a couple of weeks ago, and I actually saw Mr. Stewart, and we talked for a few minutes. It's an awesome place. Yeah.
Indeed it is.
Great.
Any further discussion? All right, then, all in favor of Bill 2509, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Bill 2510, an ordinance accepting a permanent water line easement from properties located at 151 through 159 South Mount Auburn Road in the city of Cape Girardeau, Missouri. This is the first reading. Mr. Pulley.
Thank you, Mayor, Dr. Haskin, Council. This ordinance accepts the permanent water line easement from Mid-America Hotels, which they did donate. Mid-America Hotels remodeled 3 buildings on the property at 151, 155, 159 South Mount Auburn. During the remodel and rebuild program, a new water main extension was constructed. We need to bring this water main into the city.
Okay. Anyone in the audience wishing to comment on this bill? Hearing none, then, council, is there a motion to approve Bill 2510?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion, council? Hearing none, all in favor of Bill 2510, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion carries. And then, Mr. Pulley, stick around. Bill 2511, an ordinance accepting a permanent water line easement from Community Counseling Center for property located at 1987 Russmar Street in the city of Cape Girardeau, Missouri. This is the first reading.
This is an ordinance accepting the permanent water line easement that was donated by Community Counseling. Community Counseling Center built a new building at 1987 Russmar Street. As part of the new building, they constructed a new water main extension across Russmar to bring the fire and hydrants and what they needed for the new building. We need this to, city to accept it.
All right, thank you. Anyone in the audience wishing to comment? Hearing none, then, council, is there a motion to approve Bill 2511?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion, council? All right, hearing none. All in favor, then, of Bill 2511, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do not have any appointments tonight. No one registered to speak with other business. And so at this point, is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, then, of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you all for your time tonight.